Brock Lesnar has been firing shots at Hulk Hogan for years, raw and unfiltered. No gimmicks, no promos, just pure disdain. And now Lesnar's reportedly unleashed new evidence that could finally rip the mask off Hulk Hogan's entire legacy. And the jaw-dropper? Hogan's ex-wife tried to warn us long ago, but we didn't listen. He's not just a fraud, he's a manipulator of the highest order. And this new evidence? It's the kind of bombshell that makes you question everything you thought you knew about the so-called immortal. The beef between Brock Lesnar and Hulk Hogan isn't some backstage squabble. It's a long-burning, deeply personal war, and it might be the realest grudge pro wrestling has ever seen when fans talk about legendary rivalries. Names like The Rock and Stone Cold or Hogan and Andre the Giant usually come up. But hidden beneath the glitz and pyros was one of wrestling's ugliest feuds, spanning over 2 decades between two titans, Brock Lesnar and Hulk Hogan. What started as scripted chaos turned into something disturbingly real, and honestly, after everything that's come to light, Lesnar may have seen through Hogan's smoke and mirrors from day one. It all kicked off in the summer of 2002. W was in transition mode, trying to crown its next megastar. Enter Brock Lesnar, a freak athlete, a destroyer, a 25-year-old NASA wrestling machine with a look and aura that screamed main event. What had plans? He'd crush The Rock and take the title. But first, they needed him to steamroll a legend. Enter Hulk Hogan, back in W, basking in nostalgia and ripe for the taking. Paul Heyman, Lesnar's mastermind manager, orchestrated the build. Week after week, Lesnar humiliated Hogan, mocking his age, his legacy, and everything he stood for. One moment that fans never forgot, Lesnar hijacking Hogan's limo. It wasn't just entertainment, it felt personal. You could see it in Brock's eyes. There was no respect there, just contempt. Hogan finally snapped. He issued a challenge. Stephanie McMahon made it official. August 8, 2002, SmackDown. Hogan versus Lesnar. This was supposed to be textbook wrestling storytelling. Aging hero puts over rising star. And sure, Hogan had agreed to do the job, but what unfolded inside that ring went way beyond business. From the opening bell, Lesnar didn't wrestle Hogan, he dismantled him. The first lockup wasn't a test of strength, it was a message. Lesnar flung Hogan across the ring like a ragdoll. His iconic bandana flew off, and with it, so did any illusions that he was still the man. To his credit, Hogan landed a few stiff shots. But it was clear he was an old man in a young man's sport. Lesnar, meanwhile, was moving like a trained assassin, calculated, brutal, and fully in control. This wasn't just domination, it was exposure. Hogan looked like what he was, a relic desperately clinging to relevance. The finish was ruthless. With Heyman blocking Hogan's leg drop, Lesnar locked in a bear hug so vicious, Hogan's already injured ribs caved under the pressure. The referee waved it off. Hogan had been knocked out cold, but Lesnar wasn't done. He picked up a steel chair and smashed it into Hogan's violence. It was a statement. This wasn't passing the torch. This was burning it to the ground. Business-wise, it worked. Lesnar went on to squash The Rock and become the youngest WWE champion in history. But what happened that night in 2002 laid the foundation for something much bigger, a real-life vendetta that would come back to explode 12 years later. 12 years passed. Brock Lesnar had done the unthinkable, left WWE, conquered the UFC, became heavyweight champion, then returned to Vince's empire with more control and legitimacy than anyone before him. He was no longer the next big thing, he was the thing in Hogan. Hogan had drifted through scandal after scandal, his glory days trailing behind like a tattered cape. August 11th, 2014, Monday Night Raw, throws a grand tribute for Hogan's 61st birthday. The ring was packed with legends. The mood was celebratory. Fans cheered, his family was there, smiling. This was supposed to be Hogan's moment to bathe in nostalgia. Instead, it turned into a reckoning. The music hit and Brock Lesnar walked out. Everything changed. Lesnar, flanked by Paul Heyman, stormed the ring. The grin on his face wasn't for the crowd. It was for Hogan. He wasn't there to play nice. No script, no bullet points, just raw venom. He walked right up to the birthday boy and growled, "What you gonna do, Hulkster?" Then paused, sneered, and spat the line that would go down in wrestling infamy. "Party's over, Grandpa." The crowd popped, then froze. That wasn't just disrespect. That was calculated humiliation. On Hogan's birthday, in front of his wife, his children, and his so-called brothers in the business. Lesnar didn't just crash the party, he pissed on the cake. He looked rattled. For all his years of selling punches and working crowds, this hit different. This was personal. Backstage, Hogan was reportedly furious. In interviews afterward, he couldn't hide it. He tried to downplay it with typical bravado, but the cracks were there. "You need to bite your tongue, Brock Lesnar," he said in one interview. "You start throwing my name around in front of my family, you're crossing the line." But what line was there left to cross? Lesnar wasn't attacking a character. He was calling out the man. The myth. The decades of deceit hiding behind red and yellow tights. The gravity of the moment grew even heavier when John Cena stormed down to the ring, not in character. Not for a match, just to defuse, because even he knew Lesnar had gone too far. It wasn't performance anymore. This was someone about to explode. And Hogan's reaction only confirmed it. Later, he admitted he was shaken. "I was upset over the whole thing," he said. "We're supposed to have fun with it." But that was different? The truth? Hogan couldn't do anything about it. The old politics, the backstage strings he used to pull, none of that worked on Lesnar. Brock wasn't a product of the system. He broke the system. By 2014, Lesnar had achieved a level of freedom no wrestler had before. His UFC background gave him leverage, his box office draw gave him power, and his part-time status made him untouchable. He didn't need they needed him. That meant no punishment. No scripted comeback from Hogan, no receipt. For Hogan, that was the most bitter pill of all. He had made a career off of controlling outcomes, manipulating feuds, and always getting the last word. But with Lesnar, he had no play, no promo. Number. Rematch. Just silence. What should have been a warm night of celebration became a turning point. The moment Hogan's mystique cracked in real time, and the man who shattered it didn't care about history, tradition, or legacy. Lesnar saw through all of it and made sure everyone else did too. And if that moment felt like a punch to the gut for Hogan, what followed in the next few years would be a complete dissection of the image he worked his whole life to protect. Over the years, Brock Lesnar stayed silent. No interviews. No social media rants, no shoot promos, just nothing. And that silence became deafening because while the wrestling world kept giving Hogan tribute videos and awkward, standing ovations, more and more dirt about the real Hulk Hogan kept rising to the surface. And Lesnar? He didn't have to say a word. He knew the truth was doing all the talking for him. Let's start with the lies. In interviews on podcasts, TMZ spots, even casual fan conversations, Hogan claimed he wrestled Brock Lesnar after. UFC said he was Lesnar's first opponent back, and even tried to spin it like he mentored him in the ring. All of that? Flat-out fiction. Complete fabrication. The truth is simple. Hogan and Lesnar wrestled once in 2002 before Brock ever went near the UFC. When Lesnar came back in 2012, he went straight after John Cena. Hogan wasn't even on the active roster. In fact, Hogan hadn't wrestled a match in years. Why lie? Because Hogan couldn't stand being irrelevant to the biggest name in wrestling. He couldn't bear the idea that the industry had moved on without him. So he did what he always did. He inserted himself into the story. Someone else's story, and fans noticed. Comparing this to his other whoppers like wrestling 400 days in a year, being offered a spot in Metallic, or claiming he was almost cast in the wrestler Hogan's pattern was undeniable. The guy wasn't just stretching the truth. He was rewriting history to keep himself in it. And Brock Lesnar, a man who built his entire career on real skill, real grit, and real dominance, there's nothing more offensive to him than a fraud. Trying to piggyback on his legacy, but it didn't stop there. If the lies were embarrassing, the scandals were disgusting. The 2006 sex tape wasn't just about bad choices. It was about betrayal, manipulation, and a man capitalizing on his own infidelity. Hogan sued Gawker and won $141 million, bankrupting the company. But what made that tape truly radioactive was what else it captured. Hogan, talking about his daughter Brooke dating a black man, used the N-word casually multiple times. "I guess we're all a little racist," he said. "That wasn't locker room talk. That wasn't old school ignorance. That was who he was when nobody was watching." Well, fired him. Scrubbed him from their Hall of Fame. Fans who grew up on Say Your Prayers and Eat Your Vitamins were stunned. Hogan's superhero mask had shattered when he tried to apologize. He blamed everything but himself, his upbringing, his depression, even being taped without his consent. But nothing erased those words, not even crocodile tears. Many saw his remorse for what it was, a PR scramble, not a moral reckoning. The boos followed him everywhere. Events, interviews, public appearances. Even in 2025, during WWE's Netflix debut, the crowd made it loud and clear they hadn't forgotten, and when his ex-wife Linda broke her silence, it only got uglier. She painted a picture of a manipulative, sex-addicted narcissist, a man who cheated with their daughter's best friend, who tracked his own child's car with GPS, who used their reality show as a stage to control everyone around him. Then came the car crash. Nick Hogan, street racing in a car bought by Dad, left his passenger John Graziano permanently brain damaged. Hogan's response? "God laid some heavy stuff on that kid. No remorse. No responsibility. And still, the pile kept growing. In WCW, he sabotaged careers, walked out on shows, sued the company when he didn't get his way. In 1996, he faced a sexual assault allegation at an event. In the 90s, he lied under oath about his steroid use only to admit later he'd been juicing for 14 years, even sharing them with Vince McMahon. And as recently as 2024, while promoting Real American Beer, Hogan joked about body slamming Vice President Kamala Harris and mocked her Indian heritage. "Is Kamala a chameleon? Is she Indian? Okay, I like it." He blamed it on alcohol, again, but fans knew better. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This was a decades-long pattern. The wholesome American icon was an illusion. Behind the bandana was a man obsessed with control, blinded by ego, and constantly stepping over the line. Racist, manipulative, deceitful. He betrayed his family. He betrayed his fans. And he betrayed the business that made him. Brock Lesnar saw all of that. And instead of playing along with the legend respect narrative, he cut the act. In 2002, he broke Hogan's body. In 2014, he humiliated his pride. And in 2025, when Hogan died of cardiac arrest in Clearwater, Florida at age 71, Lesnar said nothing. No tweet, no tribute, no flowers sent to the family. While Ric Flair, The Rock, and The Undertaker all offered kind words, Lesnar stayed silent. Not out of disrespect, but out of truth. Because sometimes silence is the verdict, and what a verdict it was. Hulk Hogan revolutionized wrestling. He made it global. He gave us WrestleMania moments, Saturday morning cartoons, pop culture relevance. No one denies that, but legends aren't just measured by what they built. They're measured by what they left behind. And Hogan left behind a shattered legacy, surrounded by lies, scandals, and people who finally stopped pretending. For Lesnar, the party ended a long time ago. He saw through it all. And now, so does the rest of the world.